Evacuees on the right.
TBS 新闻大白话，我是王浅秋。首先是要这一节跟我们去讨论最新国内及国际大白话的来宾，第一位是国际政治专家赖岳谦老师。
主持人好，观众朋友大家好。
台大哲学系教授苑礼正老师。
浅秋好，各位观众朋友大家好。
退役少将立正杰将军。
浅秋好，各位观众大家好。
全球看以色列攻打伊朗的最新的发展，现在已经双方等于是互轰了第5天了。这第5天呢，伊朗声称啊，当然前面有所谓假讯息合成的画面，现在这次我也不知道啊，这个是来自于伊朗官方媒体的报道，说再次击落了 F-35的战机，他说累计到目前为止已经是第4架，而这个目前宣称被击落的是在西北城市大不里斯这里，再一次击落 F-35战机，而伊朗也反击，下令在新一波的攻击不断的在空袭当中，包括这个向以色列说飞弹会一路炸到天亮，凌晨整个夜空上面满满的都是弹药火光。那除了我们画面上看到是被炸的城市的画面，如果定格来看，我们看到这种现场照片放下来，看起来这伊朗的官媒看到，他想的是我不要 back 特拉 特拉维夫我们回来了。你看这画面，很像流星啊！整个城市这可不是浪漫的流星啊，这个都是一枚一枚的炸弹飞过来之后，可能被拦截，有些拦截的残骸要掉到地面上，可能造成的伤害。而伊朗也第一次发动了白天的攻击，对以色列长距离的打击，还有白天看到了这个城市也是不停的冒出了火光。以色列倒过来也要控制德黑兰的上空，现在据称他已经完全把制空权给控制了。伊朗威胁会有极大可能反击啊！让纳塔尔的声明是说，以色列空军已经控制了相关的这个首都德黑兰的空域啊，改变了整个战役，意思就是说，伊朗已经没有办法再回击了吗？那川普也放消息说啊，伊朗想要跟我谈和平协议了吗？可是看起来目前实际的状况来讲，双方的这个攻击没有停过，而因为除了伊朗的斩首行动把和平总司令给这个歼灭了之外，另外一面把国安情治官员捐身也已经给斩首了。所以接下来以军发动最远的打击，我们看到一个哇，这个很长的距离，2300公里以外，它打到了伊朗北边的一个机场，机场停了一架伊朗的加油机，被称是这一次军事行动里面距离最远的一次打击。除了精准之外，还可以长距离。那战火第4天的时候呢，也有个数据说，以色列摧毁了1/3伊朗的飞弹发射器，除了核设施、天然气。
And we had a discussion last night amongst G7 leaders. President and I will discuss more, and then of course we'll have the direct discussion in a moment together. But we underscored the importance of using maximum pressure against Russia.
请沿道路行驶57公里。
And it has led unconditionally to come to the table in search of peace. And maximum pressure includes financial pressure, and Canada is announcing today several measures, sanctions, first and foremost, against a number of individuals in Russia, against over 40 entities in Russia and beyond that are trying to contribute to the evasion of sanctions. The sanctioning of over 200 vessels in the Shadow Fleet that Russia is using again to try to evade these sanctions. That's the first thing. The second is we are providing additional military assistance, drones, helicopters, broader munitions, over $2 billion worth of assistance directly to Ukraine. And thirdly, we are dispersing the next tranche of the loan based on the frozen Russian assets, over $2 billion as well. This is our contribution. We'll be working with our European and other allies for their contributions to provide the support. And to be absolutely clear, the support will be unwavering until we get a just peace for Ukrainian people.
Thanks so much, dear Prime Minister. First of all, good to be here in Canada, and for the G7 summit, thank you for your invitation. But first of all, thank you for your very important words, warm words, and supporting Ukraine. Of course, condolences to our families. Really, Ukrainians had, our families had very difficult night. One of the biggest attacks from the very beginning of this war, 440 Shaheeds, Iranian drones, and 32 missiles, including ballistic. And I was on direct connection during the flight with all the ministers and of course with the chief of air defense, and really it was a big attack on civilian infrastructure, on people, just people, houses, and etc. And for now, information is not total information, not final information, but for now we have 138 injured people and 12 killed. And so, yes, it's a big tragedy for us, and we need support from our allies. And I'm here, and thank you for the military package. It's important for our soldiers to be strong in the battlefield, to stay strong until Russia will be ready for the peace negotiations. We are ready for the peace negotiations, unconditional ceasefire. I think it's very important, but for this we need pressure. And of course I want to speak with Prime Minister today about sanctions, additional sanctions, and thanks for the real unwavering support from your side, from all the Canadians to our people. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Merci beaucoup.
That was Prime Minister Carney and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky at the G7 summit in Kananaskis, Alberta. You can find more information and updates as the G7 summit wraps up today on cbc.ca/news. The time is 3:50. You're listening to Up to Speed. Canada's healthcare system is not prepared for climate change and the emergencies that come with it, according to many experts. But some medical professionals are trying to change this. Dr. Courtney Howard is one of them. She's an emergency doctor in Yellowknife and the chair of the Global Climate and Health Alliance. Dr. Howard designed a roadmap for doctors to improve response to climate crisis and health impacts. She joins us this afternoon. Good afternoon, Dr. Howard.
Hi, Chloe. Thanks for having me.
So in what ways is climate change impacting healthcare in this country?
Well, I suspect it's pretty easy to imagine. They're in Manitoba right now.
Sure.
When you get displaced from a wildfire, usually the healthcare in that location is also either evacuated or left with a skeleton staff. People are then dealing with the health impacts of being displaced. Many people forget their medications, their social stressors, they can't access their jobs, so there's often an income-related hit. And then the healthcare facilities in the receiving place often get overwhelmed because now they're dealing with a whole bunch of people who can't access care in their normal location in addition to the people they're usually taking care of. And so there's all of those evacuation-related troubles. We had those up here in 2023. The wildfires forced the evacuation of our 100-bed subarctic hospital as well as 70% of the territory. And that happened without a plan. We have a lot of water and rock around the city here in Yellowknife, and we always thought that actually that would protect us adequately from wildfires, that we would never have to evacuate. But we made that plan based on last century's temperature and precipitation instead of this century's and what we're going to get. And so we know that 21st century fire is just an entirely different beast. It really came upon us so quickly that my neighbor, the territorial medical director, had to figure out how to evacuate a 100-bed hospital thousands of kilometers away on just a couple days' notice. So that required a military evacuation plane. You can imagine the cost and the stress. So in other parts of the country, floods have taken out electrical grids and highways. In a hospital last year, not only did the electrical grid go down, but the backup generator got flooded. So then they had no electricity whatsoever. They couldn't get the medications out of the Pyxis machine. They were trying to take care of people without any electricity. The heat dome totally overwhelmed services in Vancouver. So we have work to do to adapt, but what we can see from the severity of impact right now is that we also have to emergently decrease greenhouse gas emissions, so we keep this within a realm that is even plausibly something that we can manage.
So preparedness is definitely something that needs to be addressed here. What does your roadmap cover?
Yeah, so I really want to give credit to the leadership of the Association of Faculties of Medicine of Canada. We know that in Canada, about 50% of youth report impacts to their overall mental health from worrying about climate change, and 37%, which is huge, to their daily function. So the doctors of tomorrow essentially were appalled that they weren't getting taught about climate change. It was 2009 when The Lancet told us that climate change was the biggest public health threat to health and health systems of our time. But we were in a bit of a circuit where senior leaders didn't know about it, so they didn't teach anybody about it, so then nobody knew about it. And what happened was the young doctor said, that is not okay, we're heading towards a terrible generational handover. And Julian Poitrage, Geneviève Moineau, some of the leaders said, okay, well, we'll make a declaration of planetary health, we'll ask the deans to sign on. It calls for immediate implementation of planetary health education and research and a transition to climate-resilient, low-carbon health system. And then they set a deadline for announcement of whether or not people signed on. It was at the international conference they were hosting. So faced with a clear yes or no question, time pressure to actually learn the material, the deans all looked at it and said, oh, you're right, this is a big problem, and signed on. And then the next year we put this implementation roadmap together. And so what we see is that in order to basically brief the entire country quickly, we need a National Resource Center for Planetary Health so that we can basically work together to provide materials to inform practice and policy and research. And we need to coordinate. We have a national coordinating secretariat that is helping us to make a plan at the national level. Canada signed on to a WHO initiative for climate resilient, sustainable, low carbon healthcare a couple of years ago. So we've got a national group that's working on it, although the National Adaptation Strategy, the Auditor General told us a couple of weeks ago, is being implemented far too slowly. We do have great work happening on the front line. Today we have the good news that a lot of anesthesiologists, led by the Canadian Anesthesiologist Society, are already leading by example in decreasing greenhouse gas emissions by phasing out a really super polluting anesthetic gas called desflurane. That is terrible for the environment. It's more expensive than the alternative. It doesn't provide any clinical benefit. And so we need a secretariat now to connect this great work that's being done at the front line with what is trying to be coordinated at the federal level by making provincial and territorial sustainable healthcare secretaries, so that there's a link between the front line and the national level that allows us to do this in a coordinated way so we can do it at scale.
So there's the research, the education, the organizing of the systems, but what are the practical changes recommended for the healthcare system to improve its response?
Well, it helps to just think about a case. So my 11-year-old daughter had her appendix out 2 weeks ago, and that required a hospital that has functioning electricity and water. When you think about who needs to do climate-related education or informed education, that means our engineers need to have this in their education too, our architects, our city planners. It needed strong hospital infrastructure. So again, the people who design our hospital, it needed a well-trained and healthy OR staff. So all the OR staff, all the doctors, health professionals need to know how climate change affects things like Lyme disease and wildfire smoke, as well as how to treat it. And it required an intact supply chain. Where should we be ordering from? I think we should probably be making a lot more things in Canada. Because then if there is a supply chain that breaks down along one of our borders, like we've seen from an economic perspective, we're now familiar with economic risks to supply chains. We have ecological risks that are increasing as well. So my daughter was able to have her appendix out. I want her to be able to have a sterile C-section as well in 20 years. I want her, if she needs one, I want her to be able to get her hip replaced. So in order to make sure that that happens for my kids, for your kids, for all of us, if we need a hip replaced in a year, 10 years, or 20 years, we need to really take a look at each one of these components, make sure that not only healthcare professionals, but all the professions that are involved understand basically what we're all working towards. We're working towards a healthy, safe future where we can provide healthcare for one another. And in order to get there, we need to come to terms with the fact that we're now in this place where we have climate-related impacts we would never have wanted. It makes us all sad. There's often some grief work that's required for that. But what we know is that preparation not only does good, but it feels good. Action feels better than anxiety. And this is a really concrete way that we can work to make sure that our kids have a safe and healthy future that we can feel good about leaving them with.
Courtney, this sounds like so much work, so much good, important work. Thank you for taking it on.
Well, I really appreciate it. And, you know, I have a lot of family in Manitoba, so I'm really sending a lot out to you because I know it's a tough time, and something we did find in Yellowknife was the community was the best part about all of it. So I know that you're taking care of one another there.
Thank you, Courtney. Thank you for the shout-outs. Courtney Howard, an emergency physician and the chair of the Global Climate and Health Alliance. She joined us from Yellowknife. Still lots to come in the next hour of Up to Speed. The Red River X is back, and this year there's something new to help make the event more inclusive for those who need a space to pray. We'll bring you all the details here on Up to Speed just after the World This Hour.
Hey Terry, why is there so much dancing in commercials these days? Why do ad makers hire so many celebrities?
Oh, this is John Hamstar.
And speaking of celebrity, whose voice is that?
Go Bacon! Go Bacon! Go Bacon!
You have questions, Terry O'Reilly has the answers. Ask Terry on Under the Influence. Thursday morning at 11:30, 3:30 p.m. in Newfoundland. And on demand on CBC Listen. Tonight at 9:30 in Newfoundland, it's Q.
Owen Wilson has played cowboy, robber, male model, and now pro golfer. Actually, ex-pro golfer with a dark past. Because as we've come to expect from Owen Wilson, nothing's as straightforward as it seems. He's going to tell you all about his new show, Stick. From CBC News, The World This Hour, I'm Gina Louise Phillips. Donald Trump is demanding Iran's unconditional surrender.
I
his word for his word.
Tammy Bruce with the U.S. State Department says the White House's next steps with Iran are entirely up to the president. Trump says killing Iran's supreme leader isn't currently considered, but that could change. He is also praising American weapons for enabling both Israel and the U.S. to gain complete control of Iran's airspace. The comments mark a notable departure from the White House's official position that the U.S. is not involved in Israeli strikes on Iran. Sirens sound yet again in Israel as Iran launches a fresh barrage of missiles. Israeli officials say 24 people have been killed since Friday. Fighting began when Israel struck Iranian military and nuclear sites and killed top commanders of the Revolutionary Guard. More than 200 Iranians were killed in those attacks, more than 1,000 injured. The World Health Organization says Gaza hospitals are overwhelmed after gunfire killed at least 50 people waiting for aid. Gaza officials accuse Israeli troops of firing on crowds, injuring more than 200 residents. The WHO criticizes the Israeli-backed initiative in charge of distributing the supplies. Thanos Gargamanis is a trauma surgeon.
The recent food distribution initiatives by non-UN actors every time result in mass casualty incidents. We are walking the fine gray line between operational capacity and disaster every day.
Israel says it's investigating the incident. It insists the previous humanitarian effort led by the UN, Red Cross, and other agencies made it easier for Hamas to steal aid.
This underscores the importance of standing in total solidarity with Ukraine.
Prime Minister Mark Carney has announced more help for Ukraine. Canada is giving an additional $2 billion in military aid and another $2.3 billion in the form of loans. Carney welcomed the Ukrainian president to the G7 summit in Kananaskis, Alberta, as Volodymyr Zelensky calls for an emergency UN Security Council meeting after another lethal Russian attack.
We need support from our allies, and I'm here to thank you for the military package supported for our soldiers to be strong in the battlefield, to stay strong out until Russia will be ready for the peace negotiations.
Carney also announced a new sanctions package targeting Russia's energy revenues. The federal government is hoping to get its major projects bill through the House of Commons by the end of the week. It's meant to eliminate barriers to nation-building infrastructure projects, but some First Nations are concerned about proper consultation. David Thurton has the story.
But there's a lot of things that are troubling, that should trouble all of us.
Alvin Fiddler, Grand Chief of the Anishinaabe-Aski Nation, isn't the only one concerned about Bill C-5. Protesters gathered on Parliament Hill to voice their opposition. The legislation would allow the government to approve infrastructure and energy projects up front, along with exempting specific projects from federal laws. A sweeping power that would be in effect for 5 years. Many Indigenous groups oppose the bill, but the Minister of Crown and Indigenous Relations, Rebecca Alty, says Indigenous rights are woven throughout.
Major projects will only proceed under this Act with meaningful consultation and accommodation with Indigenous peoples.
It has broad support from industry, and the Conservatives are signaling they back it too. This likely assures its passage in the House by the end of the week. David Thurton, CBC News, Ottawa.
An Alberta Conservative MP has officially resigned his seat so that Pierre Poilievre can run in a by-election. Damien Couric vacated his spot in the Battle River Crowfoot riding to pave the way for the Conservative leader. Poilievre lost his Ottawa area seat in the general election to Liberal Bruce Vanjoy. And that is your world this hour. For CBC News, I'm Gina Louise Phillips.
Good afternoon, Manitoba. You're listening to CBC Radio 1. I'm Chloe Friesen, and this is Up to Speed. Thanks for joining us this afternoon. Coming up today on the show, fraudsters are always looking for new ways to take advantage of people. And as our technology columnist explores this afternoon, AI is only ramping up ways in which they trick people. We will get all the details on that story coming up on the show. Also still to come, the Edmonton Oilers are looking for a win tonight 20, becoming light this evening, and a low of 13. I will have a more in-depth look at your weather forecast coming up later here on Up to Speed. Hello and thank you to the team on the show today. Marshall Hodgins is our technical director behind the boards. Thank you, Marshall. Dylan Longhurst, our show director, also keeping an eye on the commute. It's been quiet though, hey?
It's been fairly quiet today so far. We did get a call from David just a little while ago letting us know about some emergency vehicles attending to a situation along northbound St. Mary's just before Marion, currently blocking the northbound curb lane. So if you're in that area, you want to keep left in order to get around. Use caution when passing. Yeah, that situation may not be super long, so hopefully it clears up. If you want to give us an update or tell us about anything else you're seeing out there on the road, you can do so at 204-788-3093.
like that for them is a very simple thing for us to do.